Hello, everybody. If you are just logging in tonight, feel free to use the chat function at the bottom of the screen to let us know where you are listening in from. Hello from Healdsburg, California. Hello from Seattle. Another Seattleite. Wow, hello from Brooklyn, New York. Hello from Bellingham. Hello from Seattle. Thank you all so much. We're so excited to have you tonight. We're going to get started in just a few moments here, but in the meantime, welcome. My name is Meghna. I'm a staff member here at Book Larder in Seattle. We are a community cookbook shop based in the Fremont neighborhood, if you are familiar with Seattle's many neighborhoods. And we have, since COVID, transitioned to all digital virtual events for the many authors that we host. Which is a nice surprise, actually. We've been able to host folks from all over the country and all over the world. So it's one upside of the virtual events. So thank you all for tuning in and for joining us from near and far. We're going to get started and introduce Danielle Alvarez, who's our guest author tonight, as well as our interviewer, Olaiya Land. But before that, I just want to show you all the cover of this beautiful book, Always Add Lemon. We do have copies available for sale in our store and also online at booklarder.com. I will paste a link into the chat so anyone who's interested can check it out and order it. But we're so excited to get started tonight. A big warm welcome to Danielle Alvarez. She is coming to us tonight from Sydney, Australia. She's the chef over at Fred's in Paddington, which is in Sydney. And we are just so excited to hear about her brand new book, Always Add Lemon. She will be speaking to Olaiya Land tonight. Olaiya is our event partner over at Lionesse, and they'll both be talking for about 40 minutes or so tonight. Olaiya will be taking questions and fielding them for Danielle towards the end of the evening. So if you have any questions for Danielle throughout the evening, feel free to pop them into the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. That way we'll be able to read your questions and get through them. We will try to get through as many as possible, so please do bear with us. Without further ado, I'd like to welcome Olaiya and Danielle back on screen. We're so excited to have you and thank you for joining us.
Hello, hi everyone.
Yay. Okay, let's get started. Hi, Danielle, how are you?
I'm doing great. I'm in the future here in Sydney, and
yes.
things are the same over here. So
you're in Wednesday, right?
Yeah, we're on Wednesday at around noon.
Okay, so crazy.
Yeah, I know.
Well, I am thrilled to be having this discussion with you. Your book is so gorgeous. I am really happy to be sharing it with everyone. So first of all, congratulations on the book.
Thank you.
Huge.
Thanks so much.
And before we talk about it and talk about your path, I always just like to take a minute to let people like really look at it if they haven't seen this book. The photography is just like stunning. The recipes look beautiful. So I always just like to take a minute and let people like see.
Thank you.
It's so like fresh and modern and bright.
And all looks like it was shot outdoors, right? It's got this incredible lighting that the photographer did, but it was all done in a studio.
Yes, it's beautiful. And who was your photographer?
His name is Benito Martin, and the stylist was Jess Johnson, and they're just great dynamic duo over here in Sydney.
Yes, congratulations to all of you. So anyway, yeah, this looks so good. I just wanted to I always like to take a minute so people, you know, if they're not in the shop and they can't like pick it up, but I just want to show people like what a gorgeous book it is. But before
Thank you.
we get into the book, I always like to learn about the person behind the book and like how the book
Yeah.
came to be. So I would love it if you would start by telling, you talk in the book about your family and about your upbringing. You're from Miami, right?
Yeah, I am. I'm from Miami. I was born there, um, and spent pretty much all of my youth there. Big Cuban family, so food was always a big part of the mix, but not professionally. Really a lot of food in the home, a lot of comfort food. My mom made dinner every single night. Bless her, she worked so hard and looked after us kids and put delicious food on the table. And I think watching her and being by her side, as well as my grandmother, watching them cook in the kitchen is what really led me to feel like that was the best way to convey love, to show the people that you care about that you care for them, and to look after people. And I think that was probably the spark more than the thrill of working in professional kitchens, which is something that came later for me. That piece about making people happy and wanting to give people something delicious is probably what made me want to start cooking in the first place.
Yes, I love that. And I love having chefs with a little bit more of that ethos. I feel like having worked in the restaurant industry for like 20 years, that there's a lot of this kind of male testosterone
Yes.
dominated kitchen culture that isn't about that. So I love to hear stories of
Yeah.
like people like really cooking with love, or that idea of like the main thing is like creating community. And of course you want to serve amazing food and you want to like write cookbooks and win awards and everything, but like that cooking
Well,
from the
and
heart.
exactly. And I think like getting into professional kitchens later. So like I went to university, I studied art history and food. Thinking about food as a professional career choice didn't come until later. So I went to culinary school, I moved to California, and I started working at the French Laundry. And I mean, talk about like male dominated, intense culture. But at the same time, I think I still brought to it that passion and wanting to share the beauty and love of cooking. But I also got really hooked on like the energy of a professional kitchen, to see so many people working at a really high level, completely in sync, completely committed, obsessed with their craft or what they do. Like I just thought that was incredible. So as much as that ended up not being the professional path that I took, like the fine dining route, I still was quite lucky in that I actually ended up loving it, because that was my first restaurant job and I had no idea what to expect.
Yes, that was going to be my next question. Is you write in the book about how you had this kind of like charmed professional cooking life. So take us down the charmed path. Let's hear
So I'll
about like.
tell you what the California charmed cooking life looks like. So I got, an internship at the French Laundry, which, 3 Michelin star kitchen, really high level. Stages or something, I'm not sure they do anymore, but essentially it means you go and you work for free for about 3 months. So I worked that whole year back home. I saved all my money so that I could, live over there. And I basically did like the menial tasks of the kitchen, like shaping butter into these little shapes, peeling eggshells for one of the dishes that they did, that I did hundreds and hundreds of a day. And I really worked hard. I saw a lot of what's going on. I ended up working on the floor at that restaurant as a food runner, which allowed me to see then the service side of everything. And it's a magical place. Like the garden is across the street from the restaurant, where a lot of the things that were cooked came directly from. So I got to work in the garden as well. And you're working in the Napa Valley as your first kitchen job, and it just felt really like surreal.
Mhm.
So from there, though, I moved to San Francisco, and another, I think one of the great cities of the world, and worked at the Ferry Building at a restaurant called Boulette's Larder for
Mhm.
a woman named Emerald Schwartner, who's an incredible chef. And she taught me a lot. I learned so much about the farms that they work with at the restaurant, because it opened up onto the Saturday farmers market at the Ferry Plaza, which is an incredible market. And then, I had a few other jobs in between, but my last sort of stop on the charmed California train was at Chez Panisse, which is, iconic American restaurant, um, founded and run by Alice Waters, who, is a total legend for sure. And getting to work there for 4 years was some of the best experience I ever had. And that's probably all of these things play into making you who you are as a chef and what you believe. But I would say those 4 years at Chez Panisse were the most important, and where I really learned how to cook the food that I love.
That's awesome. I mean, what an amazing experience.
What a journey. Yeah.
That sounds
And I will say, like, I think, people wonder, like, oh, how'd you do that? Like, there were so many times where I just like wrote a letter to the head chef, or, to the owner, whoever, to just say, like, I'm really interested in what you do. I really just want to learn. And I think, you can't downplay how important those small gestures are. Because so many people just think, oh, I'll never get to work there, so I'm not even going to bother. But that little writing of a letter just got me into a lot of places. It was amazing.
That's awesome. Love it.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask, so speaking about so you've got this like culinary path that you followed, but you also write in the book about how one of your food inspirations was your grandma, Ada. And you write about, I love how you write about her, kind of like how she had this graceful economy in the kitchen, but also like her intuitive nature of cooking. You use the metaphor of like that like when you're driving a car and you just like look up and you're at your destination, that she kind of cooked like that, like so intuitively. It was like almost like in the hands more than like thinking about it, and how that was something that you strive to bring to your cooking. I wondered if you could talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. So my grandmother, when she was raising me as a kid, when mom was working, she was probably in her like late 70s, and had cooked all her life. I think she's one of 5 sisters and the youngest of 5 sisters, and in Cuba, I think she was the one who was showing everyone else how to cook. I'm not sure how that happened, but surely she took things from her mom. And she really, I think, brought that when they came over to the US, that economy and grace around cooking, that even if they didn't have much and they came over as immigrants, I think she still managed to put incredible food on the table. And she always wanted to learn. So with my grandmother, we would watch those, I don't know if you remember them, but I think they were like on PBS or something, those like old chef shows where they'd find chefs in like these hotels in Germany or something with a big toques. And we would watch those. And I swear, I think that influenced me some way in the background. But, they would make something. And I remember one example that really stood out in my head because it made me think she's just so amazing. On one of the episodes, the French chef made crepes with, flambe and all this other stuff happening. And she said, okay, well, let's go make those right now. And I was like, what do you mean? I didn't know you could make those. You're amazing. How do we make those? So we made crepes. And obviously, now I know how simple and achievable something like that is. But to me as a little kid, I just thought she was a magician. And I just remember her always having a spoon in her hand, a little pot of lard in the back corner of the kitchen that she would fry empanadas in, or croquetas or something like that. And she always had something on the go. So, in the days where people used to stop into people's houses unannounced, she always had some kind of little snack or food to feed. And there was never not a seat at her table. If you showed up, you were welcome. And I think that was really beautiful.
Yes, I love it. And I love you also talk about how obviously you're cooking in a professional environment, and so it's not the same as being a home cook, and how also now nobody drops in on anybody anymore. Nobody even calls anybody anymore. But how I love that you talk about bringing the spirit of that like perspective of approaching it from hospitality, and like the restaurant as an extension of home, that you're taking care of people.
Yeah. And if you saw, I hope many of the people listening today do get to come to Sydney and visit us at Fred's. But if you've seen pictures of the kitchen at Fred's, it really is meant to look and feel like a beautiful home kitchen. I mean, it's not my home kitchen for sure, but it's like completely open. There's no barriers between kitchen and dining. So I wanted to try and bring in that feeling of, when you're at a great dinner party and everyone ends up in the kitchen at the end of the night. I mean, remember dinner parties? I'm sure no one's having many of those lately, but I love that feeling of everyone kind of gathering around. And to me, that's where the best conversations happen, the best connections, where people get to actually talk and communicate. And that was important in terms of creating that restaurant and the design of it.
The restaurant is stunning. I went on Instagram and I was just like
Yeah,
Like, it's
it's
so
pretty
beautiful.
dreamy.
But
Yeah.
everybody, if you have time, go. Do you know the Instagram handle off the top of your head? Or Magda,
Fred's
could you?
Paddington. Yeah.
Okay, awesome.
Well, for the restaurant, it's Fred's Paddington, Freds Paddington.
Yeah, everybody should go look at it. It is stunning. And Australia is like way high on my bucket list. Like, this was actually probably going to be the year if things had gone
Oh,
differently.
next
But
year.
yes, next year we'll get there. And it just looks
Yeah.
amazing. It's so beautiful.
Yeah.
Awesome. And this wasn't actually on my list of things to ask you about, but you mentioned that you studied art history, and it's so
Yeah.
weird to me. So I've done several of these interviews, and just I know a lot of food people or a lot of people who've written cookbooks, and almost everybody has studied art history. Like, it's a thing.
That's wild. I mean, I think I get it though. Like, I understand that in that, like, just even if you're not ready to sort of be the creative person, the appreciation and admiration for artists and for beautiful things was something that I always carried with me. So I really, it wasn't even like I went for art history because that's exactly what I knew what I wanted to do. But in that space of a young 20-year-old, I didn't really know what I wanted to do, but I knew that that was something creatively that could serve me in a multitude of different areas. So, and I love learning about history. I love learning about history through art. And also part of it is with that degree, I got to spend some time in Rome, in Italy, and talk about great food cities of the world. Like, I think also that played into me wanting to cook, because it just opened my eyes to a whole nother level.
Yeah, it's so interesting to me. It's like really this common thread that runs through a lot of like
That's so
culinarily
wild.
inclined women that I know, this like appreciation for art history. So I just want to
Wow.
call that out.
Yeah.
You write in the book about food kind of as this like the great unifier, or so before we get into like talking more specifically of the book about the book, and I wondered if you could speak a little bit about kind of like just your perspective on food, like why food, like why is it worthwhile for you to put your energy there, for us to like read your book, to like what is it about food and this like idea of cute community and unity that really speaks to you?
Well, I think it's the one thing, and I'm not the first to say this, and I know a lot of people have said it before, but it is the one thing that we can all enjoy and appreciate. Like, you show me every different type of person from all different walks of life, and everyone can gather around a really delicious plate of food. And I think I recognized that pretty young, just to see that you grow up kind of, and I'm fortunate to grow up middle class kid in the suburbs of South Florida. But as I've been able to travel and see other places and meet other people, I realized that there is a lot of commonality. And I think, God, now more than ever, like, appreciating the commonality more than the things that separate us is so important. I also really have strong beliefs, and I think that it comes from my time at Chez Panisse in California, mostly. I mean, everywhere in California has a really strong connection to buying things from small, local, organic, hopefully, growers in the area, which directly supports your community and can make your community a better place. So I'm not saying it's like the answer to everything, but I do think food is immensely powerful. It's something we all do. We all do it several times a day. And if we made some better choices, or really invested in our local communities a little bit more, I think our communities would benefit to pick everyone up from a social perspective. So it is political also. It's not like you can ignore that fact, but in the end, I also think it is ultimately a pleasurable thing. Good food, delicious food, is something that gives a lot of us joy in a world that can feel a bit bleak at times.
It's a little short on joy at the moment.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? But good food and good cooking, like, to me, I think that just turns the day around. Like, if I'm having a terrible day, or the news is getting me down, if I spend the time in my kitchen, even if it's alone or with my partner or whoever, it immediately lifts my spirits.
Yes, totally. I mean, food is so powerful. It's like transporting, transformative, like plays so many roles. Like, you're right about it is very political, like how you shop, who you shop from, who has access to food. So it's all super
That's right.
important.
And I think also educational. Like, I think that's probably one of the things that I've appreciated most in the last year, not being able to travel and see things firsthand, is just connecting with different kinds of people online and sharing recipes and learning about different cultures through food. I mean, what greater way to learn about a culture than through what they eat? And it's so much fun.
Yes. And speaking of like food culture and like what people eat, I'm very curious about like what the food scene and the food culture is like in Australia versus Miami, and or just versus California versus the US in general. Like
Well, I think,
similarities, differences.
well, one thing that you might notice, like right off the bat, if you came here, and there's something that I really appreciate and love about Australian culture, is they hate a chain restaurant.
Hmm.
And they don't like you rarely, you won't find a Starbucks. No offense, Starbucks. I know we're
No, it's
talking
all
to
good. It's
Seattle
all
fans.
good.
No, but they just have never bought into that. I think there's a real support and love for your small local cafe, your small local restaurant. So it really feels like if you are someone who is driven and determined, that you can come here and open a restaurant, you know, a little 25-seat place. I mean, it's still going to be hard work, right? But I felt a lot like that element in the US was really closing as I was getting ready to leave. So I think that part about Australia is really cool. It's mostly independently run. That's one thing. A lot of seafood. I think, you know, there's so many ideas about Australia, but more than being that like orange deserty rock area that we've all seen, there's a huge coastline and a lot of really incredible seafood that I had not experienced before. So that plays a big role. And I think a lot of just young chefs that want to do cool and interesting and creative things. So it's a lot smaller than the US. I mean, I think most people would be surprised to hear that the entire population of Australia is smaller than the population of California. So across a huge area that is
Yeah.
almost the size of the US. So it is quite enormous and sprawling, and there's only a few major cities, but there's a lot of people doing really cool things, and the produce is incredible. It just makes it a bit trickier logistically to be so spread out to be able to get produce like into the restaurant because people are so much further away.
Okay. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that. I have to
Yeah.
say that like the thing that inspired me to even want to go to Australia was that I just kept reading about the food scene, like especially in
Yeah.
Sydney, just like more and more I'm seeing chefs doing exciting stuff and chefs working with indigenous ingredients and just like all kinds of cool stuff. It feels like is there kind of like a food like renaissance in Sydney, or has this been going on for a while, or?
Yeah, I don't know. I think every few years there's like a new generation of young chefs that come up and bring with them that fresh injection of energy. And I think the clientele, the customers, they really do appreciate that. So there's a lot of support for the small, creative little restaurant down the road that people love. And I'm so happy you touched on the indigenous ingredients, because I think that's something that is really something that the chefs champion here. So an appreciation for indigenous culture through food and through using the ingredients. I think the big challenge though is in sourcing those indigenous ingredients is making sure that the money for that goes to the people that are growing it and for the people that are the custodians of the land. So I think that's, you know, another topic, but something that chefs here are keen on working through.
Is there like one ingredient that you've discovered since you've been there that's like you'd never experienced before, or?
Oh my God, there's so many. Like there are things here that when you taste them, you think, my God, where did that come from? I mean, and it comes from here. And a lot of it is, it's quite bitter, it's quite sour, it's really salty. And I think you realize that that comes from a really rugged and rough landscape where that might be the only kind of flavor that would be able to survive. So there's things like lemon aspen, which are these tiny little berries that are white that taste like like if you took a whole lemon, like I love, and concentrated it down into something like that, that's what it tastes like. It's all the bitterness, it's all the sweetness, it's all the sourness. So and there's a million other things that I could rattle off, but that's just one great example.
That's got to be so exciting as a chef to
It
like
is. And
step
I
into.
gotta say, I still am working out how to work those flavors into my like Mediterranean Californian palate, because a lot of times I think they have such explosive flavor that you really feel like I need to tame that a little bit, but really maybe you shouldn't. Maybe I should just be appreciating more of what it gives.
I love that. Oh, so exciting. I'm jealous. It sounds very
No.
exciting.
It is.
Okay, let's get into the book a little bit. So
Okay,
first up,
let's talk about it.
we gotta talk about the title. So please tell us about why always add lemon.
Well, the title actually came at like the 11th hour, which was interesting. I'd written it and it'd been edited, and it was kind of like, okay, guys, I really need the title now. And I think my publisher, Jane Wilson, and I just realized that it was like the common thread that ran through almost all the recipes, not all the recipes, and it is a big part of how I cook. I love things to taste really fresh and bright and flavorful. And I think you can only do so much with salts, and lemon is like that last little bit of brightness that balances, that brings acidity, that makes you taste everything a bit more on your palate.
Yes. What else do I want to ask you about this book? Oh, I want to share with people. I love that you have it in here at the very beginning of the book on page 6. Do you mind if I take a minute and kind of share your
please.
cooking credo?
Yeah.
Okay, number 1, cook with the seasons. Number 2, support your local farmers. 3, don't freak out when things go wrong. I want to come back and talk about this one. Number 4, read the full recipe before you start. Such good advice. Number 5, find your favorite wooden spoon and keep it. I love that. Number 6, taste at every step of the way. I want to come back and talk about this one too. And then invite people over for a meal, but don't overthink it. And number 8, a little bit of lemon will change everything. And then I love that you have here kind of like you talk in
a
little
little
bit
breakdown.
Yeah. But I want to especially talk about like a few of these. So I would love for you to talk about don't freak out when things go wrong, because as somebody who's like taught cooking classes and cooked in restaurants, I noticed that that's a thing with a lot, not everybody, but a lot of home cooks. They're like, they've got the recipe and they got to follow the recipe. And if it doesn't go exactly to plan, people freak out. So talk to us. How do we not freak out?
Yeah, they panic. So I think my biggest thing, I mean, look, if you're the type of personality that does freak out, I don't think there's anything I'm going to say to make you not freak out. But I think you should take some confidence in when you read through the recipe, try to pick up on the things that the author is saying. And I try to give little tips in here around this is what you're looking for, because all of our stoves are different, all of our ovens are different. You need to, rather than follow everything to the line, realize that, okay, if the author is saying this needs to cook for 5 to 7 minutes or until it's brown and bubbly, if it needs a bit more than that to get brown and bubbly, then you should feel like you can do that and that you should do that. Also, there's so many things that happen, like something is a little bit burnt or a little bit overcooked or whatever. In all my years of experience, I've never felt like that had to necessarily ruin the entire night or ruin the experience. Like the amount of times I've just scraped the little burn bit off, or just put a bit more sauce on something that was overcooked and it was still delicious. I just think, don't approach it with this like need to be perfect, because cooking is a journey, it's an adventure. You should more than anything be having fun. And worst comes to worst, just order a pizza if it doesn't work out.
Words to live by.
Yeah.
If it doesn't work out, just order a pizza. But no, seriously, I mean, that is kind of like a metaphor for like just like this like stepping away from perfection. I think in so many realms is good. Just like
and it doesn't have to look like the photo, like that is done with a stylist, with multiple people, like made to look good for a picture. Like really, I've never been one who put the look of something above the flavor. To me, the flavor is always the most important. So yes, we all eat with our eyes, but I think as long as it's delicious, who cares?
I'm actually glad you mentioned that. I never thought about that perhaps people are at home thinking that their food should look like cookbooks, like not thinking about the fact that there's a whole team.
Oh, I think they do.
That.
Yeah. I mean, it's like us looking at models in magazines and thinking
Exactly.
that why don't we look like that? And really, there's a whole lot of added work in that. I see a lot of messages like on Instagram, people connect with me and they post things like, oh, it doesn't look like the photo, but it was delicious. And I really just want to say, like, I think it looks incredible, and good for you for just giving it a try.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
I want to double back and talk about that. Reminded me about the process of shooting the book, but back to your kind of like 8 points here. Tell us about your find your wooden spoon and keep it. I love
Oh,
that. That one
I
is so
have mine in
sweet.
my kitchen. I should have brought it over, but I have this like obsession with wooden spoons. I love how they feel in your hand. I think, my chefs joke with me all the time because there's something that in professional kitchens get burnt, get lost, get thrown away or whatever. And when I can't find the one that I like, I'm gonna have a bad day.
Mm.
I don't know what it is exactly, but I just feel like wooden spoons have this like calming property. It feels like something your grandmother would use, and I really aim to cook a bit more like my grandmother. So hence my love of the humble wooden spoon.
Yes, I love it. As a woman who has like far more wooden spoons that I could ever use for anything, but I just keep collecting them, like that one really spoke to me.
Good,
Yes.
good.
And then the last one I want to ask you about is invite people over for a meal, but don't overthink it. I know that
Oh,
like that was
well,
some
that was written pre-COVID, obviously. So if you're not having people over, I mean, who would have thought that we'd be in this place where you can't have your friends over? But when we do get back to those times, because I'm sure it's coming, I think the most important thing is to just make something simple. Like it's not the time, I think, to be doing anything overly ambitious or feeling like you need to have a theme or you need to have, you know, and I'm guilty of this too. I'll make a protein and I'll make like 6 different salads for like 3 people. And it's like, hang on a second, just chill. It's not necessary. Just make
yes.
one thing, make a one pot thing or whatever you feel comfortable with. And I will say the only thing that I really do like to think about when I'm having people over is um, I like to make things that I can either leave at room temperature or that just can be like finishing off in the oven when people are arriving, because there's nothing worse than being stuck in the kitchen when you're cooking for friends that you really want to connect with and spend time with. So I just think the simplest thing, like, have a bowl of pasta or something, and everyone loves that. So just do that.
That's yeah, great advice. I'm sure very soon here, knock on wood, as we're able to
Uh,
see people
I'm
again,
knocking for everyone too. Yeah.
there's going to be like I'm predicting a year of like many dinner parties,
That's
many
right.
celebrations. So
And how good we now have all these cookbooks out there that people are connecting with. I expect some great meals on the horizon.
yes. So everybody, don't forget to share. Megan, will you put Danielle's Instagram info in the chat so people can follow her, but also like when you cook amazing things out of this book so that you can tag her.
Yeah, great. Please do. Yeah.
Um, so you were talking a little bit about the process of like shooting the books and having the book and having the team. So yeah, tell us what was it like to write the book? Was it nerve-wracking, or
Yep.
did you have a stockpile of recipes? And then what was it like to actually like shoot it? Like, did you actually cook the food or?
Yep. So I'll just talk a little bit about like the whole process took a really quite a few years, just because of how we decided we were going to do it. And yes, I had some recipes like ready to go that I wanted to put in, but if some of the cooks that come from like Chez Panisse or my sort of background, recipes are not something that we use very often. It's a very intuitive style of cooking that's very much based on the moment, what you found at the market, and sort of using your repertoire of history of things that you've done before to create. So for me, that was a big challenge, to be able to sit down, write things, and not let the writing down of things interrupt the creativity. Because I think it can, when you're so used to just adding a pinch of this, a pinch of that. You have to really be careful when you're writing a recipe that you make sure to make note of all of those things. So that was a journey for me to be able to do that. And so it took about a year of writing and testing in my little kitchen, and getting some friends to test recipes as well. A lot of editing, and I've learned so much about writing. Like if I ever get to do it again, I'll do so much of a better job. I'm so sorry to all the editors that had to edit my writing. So that took a while too. And then we got on to shooting, and the publishing company was so generous in giving me like a full year to shoot the recipe. So we did like 4 shoots one in each season, which I think, if nothing else, in the book, the images really do tell that story. We wanted to shoot everything in season. And that's really important to me in a produce driven book, that the things look as they're supposed to look. Like a fig should be juicy and ripe. A tomato should be bursting with flavor. Wild mushrooms only come around a particular time of year. So that kind of thing was really key. And that part, though, was so surprisingly fun. Like, I've been having anxiety attacks for the last several years in the whole process, because it's my first book, and it's not like the anxiety went away as soon as the book came out, because now I'm fielding all the questions and the things from people, but mostly totally love. And I think that is soothing my little anxious heart. But the photography process was really super fun. I think I was really nervous about that, because I felt like, God, it's the first time that I'm cooking the recipes live in front of people. Everyone's going to be eating it. I'm going to be hearing their feedback straight away. And that ended up being really confidence boosting, because I did cook all the recipes with a couple of friends that helped me out for the shoots. And everyone was just, everything that came up, they were eating and having seconds and thirds. And I can't believe how much food we went through, but everyone loved it. And I really got on super well with Benito and Jess, the photographer and stylist. We definitely had a bit of a dynamic going on by the last shoot, which was great fun.
That's awesome. When you went into the studio, like, you went like 4 times, I guess?
So we went so once every couple months we gathered and did like 2 days of shooting, and made everything in the studio. Like I said, it's not, although it looks beautifully outdoor, sunlight lit, it's not. He's amazing in that way, that he really made it look like it was al fresco, but it was in a studio.
Yeah, I love this style of photography, this very like hot light, like bright light, like very like
Lots of
contrast.
shadows. Yeah, I mean, I
Contrasty.
think that's a newer thing that I've been seeing for a while, and I think the publishers really felt like, this food would really benefit from that, and I couldn't agree more. Yeah,
It's
yes,
really
beautiful shadows.
beautiful. And also I feel like just enough styling to make it
Yeah,
feel like aesthetic, but so that the food really sings, like really, really nice.
thank you. Thanks.
I'm always amazed when people tell me like, yeah, you said like a couple days each time. So basically it's like shot in like 8 days or something. That is
Oh
always
yeah,
crazy
total
to me,
8
because
days.
it's like a huge, it's like a big book. Like when
No,
people
no,
tell me
no.
that, it sounds crazy.
And there was more that didn't get to make it in. The stylist of the book, her name is Evie, like she kept asking for more and more pages. And I think you probably have heard this, but like every time you add pages, it just costs more to print. So the publishers have to stick to their budget. But we were begging, because we had so many beautiful images that we just felt needed to go in. And it was just such fun. I think when you get creative people together in a space like that, magic can happen.
That's awesome. Really, really beautiful. What else do I want to ask you about it? Oh, I always like to, well, actually, before we get into your favorites from the book, I just wanted to call out that this has like kind of a fruit and vegetable section, and a meat section, seafood, pasta, grains, and legumes. But I love that at the back, there is this very cool projects section. And I love that it's like its own separate section. It's like, if you want to go there, here's some like cool, like more intense projects. So I'm just curious, like what made you decide to do that?
Well, I think because that is the kind of thing that I love doing at home. I love learning. I loved when I was a young cook and I learned how to make yogurt. I love making breads, and it's not the bread recipes that are in the book are not sourdough. So they are, might take a day, but you'll still have it in a day, not longer. And I just really love the whole process of observation, of making judgment calls, of tweaking things to work for the environment that you're in, like time and temperature. And even something like making a terrine or a liver parfait, like that is something that my grandmother knew how to do, but I think that was like a lost art. And my mom, I'm sure, could do it, but I don't think that was something that was passed on. And I really appreciated learning about that as a professional chef. And I just think if you're someone who loves the kitchen and loves spending time in the kitchen, like that is the section of the book to take with you on a rainy day, you know, to spend, put some nice music on and knead some bread, you know, the feeling of all of that, the textures, the flavors, the flavor delivery at the end of the day is just worth it to me.
Yes, and it's just to give people an idea. It's very cool. It's pastry, bread, dairy, meat, and pickles. So it's like flaky dough, pork, duck, and pistachio terrine, pickles, yogurt, ricotta. So I don't know. I just thought it was very cool that you added this section.
Thank you. Yeah, good fun.
And then, so I always like to ask people in these talks, like, so I got to ask you, what are your favorite recipes from the book? I know they're probably all like your children, but.
Yeah, they are. I mean, look, it's really hard to pick, but I think the salad section of the book is really like where a lot of my passion lies. And I think in the salad introduction, I do talk about that a lot, because I think especially at Chez Panisse, salads and sort of that first course in the arc of the meal can be really the first thing that sets everything up, and also a great place to showcase incredible fresh produce. So one of my favorite salads is beetroot and persimmon salad, where I roast the beetroot whole, I shave the fuyu persimmons, and just kind of like thin slices of roasted beetroot and the persimmon with a beautiful dressing and some goat's curd, yeah, and pomegranate seeds with mint. Like, to me, this is one of those things that is like all ingredients that when they're in season, you should definitely be buying, and you'd have everything. And the combination is just sensational. I think people would really, really love that one.
Yeah, this is the first recipe that I opened to, and I was like, oh my God, it's so gorgeous. And
Yeah.
also, I felt like, okay, I really need to try this because I have this idea that I hate persimmons. Like, I don't like fruit that doesn't have acid.
Right. So the sweetness of that, though, beautifully balances out with the sharp dressing that I put with it, and the goat's curd, which can be a little bit tart and sharp as well. So all of those things work really nicely together.
Yeah,
so that's one. Yeah, that's one favorite from the salad section. I also, you know, I'm deeply obsessed with pasta and anything kind of, you know, more like Italian grandmother style. So there's a ribollita recipe in there that is just such a winner, and I hope that people try that. I mean, especially if you're in the cold right now, it is so warming from the inside and deeply satisfying. So I hope people like that. It's classic with lots of bread. I cook the mirepoix for like 30 minutes, which is also something I do for like a bolognese. And you can't imagine, yeah, what that cooking of the mirepoix low and slow for an extended period of time does to develop flavor. So there's pancetta, there's rosemary, bread, lots of Parmesan, and it's just delicious.
I love ribollita, so I'm very excited about this recipe as well.
Yeah, you should definitely try that one. It's a good one to get into now in the cold. And then actually one that I really adore that I think feels a little bit more ambitious, but the pot roasted crab with the noodles, with the garlic butter noodles. So that one, I mean, if you're in the west coast of the US, like Dungeness crab is in season now, and I think it would just be stunning prepared like this. But basically it's, you know, cracking the crab, you cook it in a big pot with lots of garlic. Yeah, that guy. So we use mud crab here in Australia, which is the name of the kind of larger crab. But then serve it just with like crab crackers and napkins, and you know, the pasta goes in the pot boiled at the end, and that's it. It just, you know, mops up all the juices and the butter, and it's actually quite simple once you get into it, but I think people are a little bit afraid of live crabs.
Yes, it can be intimidating, but so delicious. And I love
So
like
delicious.
messy food like this that you just like makes a big
Oh, I
mess.
know. It's so
communal.
satisfying. Yeah,
Yes.
exactly. Exactly.
I always also like to ask, like, what recipe or recipes would you recommend for like a beginner cook?
There's one recipe that I really love for chicken that I think is, look, everyone loves chicken, right? Or a lot of people love chicken, unless, you know, you're vegetarian. But the chicken almatone with a white bean puree and lemon and brown butter, like it's those classic chicken piccata flavors, but done with the crispy skin chicken. It's just divine. Yeah. So the way that you achieve that is by letting the chicken dry out overnight, uncovered in your fridge, And that is the key to getting like a crispy crackling, whether it be chicken or pork or anything that you want a crispy skin on. It has to dry out a bit. But you just get your butcher to take the bone out of a chicken leg. You cook it skin side down in a pan. It takes about 7 or 8 minutes, kind of pressed with another pan on top. And whether or not you want to add the brown butter and the capers and the lemon onto that, or the white bean puree, this chicken prepared that way is sensational. So I think anyone that wants to cook from the book but feels a little bit nervous, hasn't cooked before, try that one first. I think you'd be really surprised at just how good chicken can be.
Awesome. That looks delicious. And I was wondering if you would mind speaking, like there's one recipe in here that for me, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm making this immediately.
I'll tell me.
The buttermilk marinated chicken with roasted grapes and za'atar, the flavors to me just sounded like insane. So could you talk about how you got the idea for this one? So
well,
beautiful.
I think like buttermilk brining, marinating is something that people have been doing a little while now. And it just really, the buttermilk helps to develop the color of the skin because of the sugars in the milk. And it also tenderizes the chicken. And I love serving the chicken like that, which is called spatchcocking, taking out the back. It cooks a lot quicker than if you were doing it whole. So it adds flavor, it adds beautiful color. And the only thing I would say to watch out for when doing that is making sure that it doesn't get overly colored before you flip it over to cook the other side, because that buttermilk does speed up that browning process. But I just love that mix of that influx of those Middle Eastern ingredients, which I think we probably have Yotam Ottolenghi to thank for introducing all of us to. So the za'atar is beautiful. You can find lots of really excellent za'atars. A lot of the ones you find at the shop sometime maybe have been sitting around a bit. So I think it's worth investing in a really high quality za'atar. And also in the book, I talk about frying the grape leaves, which if you've never tried frying a grape leaf, it's like eating a salt and vinegar chip. Like just the ones out of the jar, dry them off, fry them in some olive oil. They get crispy like a potato chip. And since they're brine, they have that kind of like vinegary sourness, and they just, all those flavors, the sweetness of the grapes. Oh God, my mouth is watering thinking about it.
Doing all of that. That sounds so amazing. That sounds so good. Okay, I want to add, so we have a question here, and everybody who's watching, if you have any more questions, please drop them in the Q&A. But our question is from Terry Wyatt. Are the recipes geared for a USA audience in terms of ingredients, or are there some ingredients that will be tough to find here? Also, are the measurements offered in both metric and imperial? So
measurements are in both. And I did really try to keep my Americans at heart when writing this. So aside from some seafood that I think would be different, but there certainly are local swaps that you could be making for that. I do think that everything is something that you'd find, and maybe even more easily found in the US than it would be in Australia. So totally, I don't think there's anything that is that specific to here except for seafood.
Okay. Yeah, I saw mud crab. Like at first I thought it was Dungeness. What is mud crab?
No, so it looks like it, but it is. There's two main crabs here. There's actually probably 3 crabs that you'd find here, probably readily available. Mud crab, which is the big one, and that's the one in the photo. It's most similar, I think, to Dungeness crab. Spanner crabs, which are these really bizarre looking, like alien crabs, but if you found a photo of them, I actually have a photo on my Instagram. They're super cool, delicious, very sweet. And then blue swimmer crabs, which would be more similar to crabs you'd find kind of East Coast US, Maryland, a bit smaller.
Okay, cool. And do you call that out in the recipes, kind of like swaps that people can make? Or
I do in some. I'm not sure that in all of them I've said what you could swap for, but if you are curious, just shoot me a message on Instagram and I'd be happy to talk you through it.
Awesome. Thank you. So if anybody has any other questions, please drop them in. And then I just always like to ask, so now that you've like done it, you've like gone through the process of the book, it's out in the world, people are receiving it, are you like jazzed to do, or do you want to turn around and do another one?
Oh my God, I'm dying to turn around and do another one, because I just think it's that thing of, it's your first, you don't really know what you're doing, the whole process, you're anxious, you're nervous or at least I was anyways, but I think I could really do it in a lot more of a focused and controlled and sure of myself way. I think confidence comes through doing, and I think I'd feel a lot more at peace with the process second time around, because I'd know a bit more of what to expect, and I think I could, do it a bit better. But I'm still super happy with what we've produced here, and there's an enormous team of people behind cookbooks, and then there's also people selling the books, promoting the book. So to me, that was really amazing, just to see what an army it takes to be able to put a book out into the world. I think we see them come out at such rapid pace that you forget and stop to think that, this is a lot of people's investment of time. And so I respect that process. And I would absolutely love to do it again.
Yes, we'll be waiting.
Thank you.
We have a couple more questions before we go. So Lisa Sellen says, excuse me. Lisa Sellen says, living in Australia, are there other cuisines you've discovered?
Well, I mean, not discovered, because I think, there's great examples of these cuisines in the US, but the appreciation for Asian food here is just enormous. Like, incredible Thai food, incredible Vietnamese food, incredible Chinese, Korean, Japanese as well. I think not just being exposed to a lot more of diversity for that part of the world is the availability of the ingredients, which I think when you go out and you taste something and you're like, wow, that's incredible, how do they achieve that flavor? And you want to be able to recreate it or at least experiment. It can be really disheartening to not be able to find the ingredients or know that you're just never going to get your hands on whatever is that essential thing in that dish. So being here, there's so much that is readily available, and I've really appreciated broadening my horizons in that end. I mean, moving out here, that was always a goal, was to explore a bit more of Asian cuisines of the world, and I think I've been exposed to a lot, and it's just so delicious. But that being said, I miss so many things from the US that I don't get over here. So I really miss Latin American food. I really miss Mexican food, because there just aren't as many places that do that really well here. And again, it's ingredients. You don't find the ingredients here that you need to create those foods. So it goes both ways.
Yes. Well, hopefully you'll be able to do a trip home before too long.
Yeah, I know. I hope so.
Okay, let's do one final question. This one is from Sabine Grulke. Who are some of your favorite chefs and books?
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, I mean, you can see behind me, I've got quite a few, but some of my favorites are Paul Bertoli's Cooking by Hand, I think, is one of the great cookbooks out there. And it, amazingly, there's very few photos, but his writing and the recipes he does, they're just so dreamy, to say the least. I think Diana Henry is incredible. She's in the UK. Her recipes are really approachable and just, I think, always deliver on flavor. David Tanis, who was my boss at Chez Panisse, who hired me. I'll always have such a love for David, but I think his food is incredible. It is that level of sophisticated simplicity that I always aspire to be like. And Skye Gingell, also in London, her restaurant is called Spring. She's been a great mentor to me as well. I never worked for her, but our paths have crossed a lot along the way. And I just think she's such an inspiring woman. And, the work that she does around sustainability in her restaurant and the connection to Fernbarrow Farm, the relationship that they have, I think is really something that I could learn from. So I really respect and adore her.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. And I think that's all the questions. So I think if we want to turn it back over to Meghna.
Hi, Olaiya.
Thank you, Olaiya.
Um,
Thanks,
Thank you
Magna.
both so much for joining us tonight, for all the thoughtful questions and answers. My mouth was watering hearing you all describe the food from the book. So thank you so much for taking the time to be with us tonight. And thank you to all of our participants who tuned in from all over the country and all over the world. We're so grateful that you were able to join us tonight. The book, Always Add Lemon, here's the cover reading, so beautiful. Is available in store and on our website, booklarder.com. So head over to our website if you'd like to purchase your copy. And then also tonight's author talk will be available on our YouTube channel post-event. So if you know someone who might really enjoy tonight's talk but wasn't able to make it, or if you just like to revisit it again, that will be posted on our YouTube channel within 48 hours. But that's all that we have for you tonight. Again, thank you, Danielle. Thank you, Olaiya, for
thank you,
us.
Magna. Thank you, Booklarder. Love you
Yes.
guys. Thank you so much.
Stay safe out there, and hopefully we all get to meet in Seattle again someday.
Yes, would love that. Love Seattle. I hope I get to see you guys soon.
Lovely to meet you. Thank you.
Thanks, Olaiya.
Good night,
Bye-bye.
everybody.
Bye. Good night.
Good night.